I'm so happy to be here joining today. I know that you've heard from a lot of different speakers and about various subjects. So it's my pleasure, my privilege to be presenting on one of the favorite things I love to talk about, and that's community and the importance of community. So first of all, thank you to Melissa and the entire team at Support Fibro. It is an honor to participate in this event and to be included with such stellar patient advocates and esteemed professionals. And I'm even more honored that I have the privilege of collaborating with you on all different projects like this. We were at ACR together, we've done lots of things together, and to work together to amplify the patient voice. Before we got started, I wanted to give a brief overview of my background and my chronic illness journey. So at 11 years old, with a family predisposition to rheumatic illnesses and a bleeding disorder as a child, I contracted Epstein-Barr virus. By the age of 12, I had been hospitalized a half dozen times with what doctors believed at the time was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. I was wheelchair bound and the disease was spreading. I was given every medication available to stop the avalanche of symptoms. Then additional lab tests revealed that I actually had systemic lupus erythematosus, and more medications and treatments followed. So over the last 30 plus years of living with lupus, I have suffered from multiple organ involvement, blood issues and musculoskeletal complications, and have been hospitalized dozens of times. Those are just a few of my bracelet collection I have there. Now, after attending a lupus support group, I realized what a need there was for lupus patients to know that they are not alone and how important community is. I started listening to the patient's needs and realizing what parallels I found as well. I also noted the pitfalls in our medical institutions that made it more difficult to access care and the alarming lack of funding and awareness that lupus and other diseases like it generated. And after working with various nonprofits, I decided to form my own nonprofit called More Than Lupus as a place for those in the lupus and lupus overlap community to feel supported, whether they were newly diagnosed or have been living with lupus for decades. Now, my focus has been, as I mentioned in the video, and always will be, to give those living with chronic illness hope and a voice in a world where many still don't understand these illnesses, nor take them seriously. I have to show this slide. Okay, so here we go. This is me, that's my husband, and that little boy, that little baby boy, just turned 10 yesterday. That's my son, Luca. And I know many of you who live with lupus or chronic illnesses, you understand the trial of trying to start a family and how difficult it can be. So I just wanted to share that with you because he's just so cute. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the importance of community is why I'm here today to talk about that. And before I get into it, I want to start you off with a quote. Two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. I think this quote sets the tone to talk about one of the most important aspects of life, and that's finding community. Now, some of you may be all too aware that life is a chronic condition. Let's just call a spade. Everyone has something they are dealing with, right? Shocking. Newsflash, I know. Now, whether it's a past trauma, an incurable illness like lupus, a pain disorder that affects multiple parts of your body like fibromyalgia, or something else, we are not wired to live in silos. We are wired to live in community. Bell Hooks once said, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation." So today I'm going to talk about what community is how chronic illness community in the context of support groups can be a good thing for some. I'm also going to touch on grief and collective joy, and how important it is for both grief and joy to be witnessed in the context of community. So, what is community? Well, there was a study by the National Institute of Health, and I'm happy to provide a link to this study as well, that defines community as a group of people with diverse characteristics who are linked by social ties, share common perspectives, and engage in joint action in geographical locations or settings. So that's the definition of community by the NIH. But what is a chronic illness community? Now, I'm not a scholar from the NIH. Let's be very clear about that. But I would define a chronic illness community as a group of people doing their best to embrace vulnerability and be open and transparent about the physical, emotional, and sometimes spiritual peaks and valleys of the disease. A chronic illness community should be a space to support and encourage each other and meet each other exactly where we are, to go before, to walk beside, and provide a shoulder to lean on, all the while learning and loving and growing together. So if you live with fibro or lupus like I do, or another chronic illness, you may start to become aware of who you want your close community to be. You may start to see a shift in who you gravitate towards after your diagnosis or during a flare, who you reach out to in times of crisis or distress, and who you let your guard down with, who you trust with your story. So let's spend a few minutes talking about that and explore the benefits and sometimes the obstacles of this process, and delve into why it is important to find your community. So on the slide, it says collective pain, and I'm going to share an excerpt from Brené Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, where she talks about this idea of collective pain, community pain. She says this: I know exactly where I was on January 28th, 1986. I was driving down FM 1960, a busy 4-lane thoroughfare in Houston, Texas. Suddenly, cars started pulling over to the curb. A few actually stopped in the middle of their lane. My first thought was a fire truck or ambulance must be coming from behind us. I slowed down to a crawl, but I couldn't see the lights of any emergency vehicle. As I rolled past a pickup truck on the curb, I glanced inside the cab and saw a man leaning on his steering wheel with his head buried in his hands. I immediately thought, we're at war. I pulled over in front of him and turned on the radio just in time to hear the announcer say, again, I repeat, the Space Shuttle Challenger has exploded. No, I started crying. I saw more people pulling over. Some were even getting out of their cars. It was as if people were desperate to bear witness to this tragedy with others, to not have to know this news alone. In Houston, home of the Johnson Space Center, NASA is not just a beacon of possibility in space exploration. It's where our friends and our neighbors work. These are our people. There was going to be a first teacher in space. Teachers everywhere are our people. After 5 or 10 minutes, cars started moving again. But now as they made their way back into normal traffic, they had headlights on. No one on the radio said, turn your lights on if you're driving. But somehow we instinctively knew that we were all part of this procession of grief. I didn't know those people or even talk to them. But if you ask where I was when the Challenger disaster happened, I will say I was with my people, the people of FM 1960. And as I mentioned, that essay is adapted from Braving the Wilderness from Brené Brown, Random House, 2017. There is nothing more bonding than sharing a life-altering experience with a stranger. Nothing, whether it be an event like the Challenger disaster or an illness like fibromyalgia or lupus. We are wired to connect with each other during difficult times. We are wired for community. I have personally experienced times when I looked into someone's eyes who has lupus, and I knew exactly how they were feeling. At that moment, that sacred moment, we were bonded on a level that I can't quite explain to anyone outside the chronic illness community realm. And unfortunately, one of the biggest hindrances in embracing community is that fibro and lupus and many other diseases like it can trick people into believing that they are the only ones, that they are alone in their experiences. They convince people that they are the only ones living, the only ones up at night unable to sleep, the only ones in this chronic pain, the only ones dealing with medication mishaps and the pain and the dismissal from their doctors, and that they're the only ones that are depressed and grieving their former life. But can I share something with you? You are not alone. Millions of people worldwide live with lupus, overlap illnesses like fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis and Sjogren's syndromes and more. And though each person living with the disease is unique, you share a similar experience with millions of people all over the world, connecting with your fellow comrades, your fellow advocates. The people in the trenches with you is essential to counteract loneliness, to help you process your grief, and even cultivate joy in your pains. So let's talk a little bit about collective joy. This is going to be, I'm going to go all the way back to the early 1900s, where a sociologist named Emil Durkheim first developed the term collective effervescence. And collective effervescence was something that he described after witnessing what he described as a magical presence that he observed during religious ceremonies. He investigated this scene of connection, communal emotion, and a sensation of sacredness that seemed to happen when people were engaging in something bigger than themselves, that they were connecting to each other, to an experience. His evaluations concluded that these experiences of community would shift one's focus from themselves to the group. So this is also true of finding a community of support when you are living with a chronic illness. Coming together to talk about life provides a much needed relief and release of the pressures that can build up when you are surrounded by people who don't live with the daily ups and downs of the chronic illness that you do. Additionally, it is an opportunity to shift your focus off of yourself and your pain and show support and love to someone else. So whether it be a support group or a religious ceremony, a music concert, or football game, experiences of collective assembly, coming together in community, affect us. Coming together allows us an opportunity to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. It's an opportunity to feel joy, to feel meaning, connection, and even peace. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of coming together for a collective group, whether it's a fibromyalgia support group or a lupus support group or another type of support group, and talk about the benefits of participating in a support group and what they may include. So benefits of a communal support group for a chronic illness like fibromyalgia or lupus include a lot of great things. Feeling less lonely, isolated, or judged, reducing distress, sometimes reducing depression and anxiety or even fatigue that can be caused from that. Talking openly and honestly about your feelings is a relief. It takes that pressure off. It also can improve your skills to cope with these challenges. It allows you to work on your communication skills, and it helps you to stay motivated to manage your chronic condition and even patient adherence, sticking to treatment plans. When you see and talk to other people in your group have started a medication and they've found it successful, or you're able to ask questions and dispel some fear of the unknown, it can help you to consider trying the medication that your doctor prescribed and that bag is sitting on the counter that you have not opened yet, right? I know we've all been there. So benefits of a communal support group can help you gain a sense of empowerment too, of control, of hope. It can also help improve understanding of your disease or your own experience with the disease. Bouncing ideas off each other, troubleshooting, and getting practical feedback about treatment options is also a benefit to community support. And lastly, learning about your health, learning about economic and social resources as well is very helpful in the context of community. So in our More Than Lupus support groups, we do a weekly More Than Lupus Facebook Live every week. We also do a monthly in-person support group and a Zoom support group every month. We are each other's cheerleaders. We not only rejoice in others' victories, but we're inspired by them. And often people are concerned before you attend a support group, or maybe a support group like More Than Lupus, that support groups are just depressing spaces, that people go to gripe and complain about their disease, and that you're going to leave there feeling more depressed than when you came. And I think those are valid concerns. And I don't find that to be true in our support group. I mean, yes, sometimes we get mad and we get annoyed and we get frustrated with our illness, but we also get together and are glad that we are not alone. We share in each other's wins, the victories, no matter how small. And we appreciate each other's vulnerability and give space for each other. Those are things that are gifts to us. And those are things that we miss when we don't see each other for a while. But I want to also say there are some challenges to support groups that you need to be aware of. You need to be cognizant of. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them so that you can decide when you attend a support group if it's the right support system and it's the right community group for you or not. Being vulnerable and open at a support group or community setting isn't without its risks. Support groups may sometimes have drawbacks, and effective groups generally depend on the facilitator to help steer away from any of these potential problems I'm going to mention. Some potential problems to be aware of may include disruptive group members, conversations that are dominated by negativity or griping. If there's a lack of confidentiality, that can really hinder the success of a support group. If there's emotional entanglement, there's group tension or interpersonal conflicts, that is a recipe for really breaking trust in a support group or community setting. If there's inappropriate or unsound medical advice, I know this is something that I take very seriously when I facilitate my online and in-person support groups. I say right at the bat, I am not a doctor. I cannot give you medical advice. I can tell you what has helped and hurt me, but I can't tell you that even what has helped and hurt me will be the same for you. All I can do is provide you with resources that you can take back to your doctor and have an open and honest conversation. See if this is the right course of action for you and your one-of-a-kind fibromyalgia or lupus journey. And then sometimes people can get a little competitive and compare and contrast conditions and experience and see who's worse or who's better or get jealous or envious. Those are things that are really hard. And maybe you've had an experience like that has set you back and it made you kind of withdraw in and away from a community setting. Now, those things can happen. And yes, those things have happened to me too. But that hasn't stopped me from moving forward and exploring other ways to get connected. Maybe the first group didn't work. Maybe you need to try another setting. Another group, maybe you know someone in a group that they really love. Maybe you prefer online. Maybe you prefer in person. It's also really important to establish your own boundaries and be aware of what boundaries are important to you so there's no re-traumatization when you're stepping into a support group and talking about something that's really hard. Also, it's super important as you're processing living with a chronic illness like fibromyalgia or lupus to connect with a counselor or a mental health professional that can help lay the groundwork for healthy processing. I have this little acronym here. If you're looking for some tips for helping setting boundaries, here's something that I've shared with my group members before. It's a fantastic acronym for the word boundary, in fact, that we find very helpful. And I know it's kind of small font there. I hope you can read that. I can send it to Melissa and Danielle if they'd like to share it with you. But the B in boundary is for be assertive. Say what you mean and mean what you say. The O in boundary is own what it is you set. Identify what boundaries are necessary and own your decision. You have choices to make, and your choices are your own. Own your decision. The U in boundary is to understand that there will be resistance. People are used to your family role. They are not used to boundaries, and it will take time for you and others to adjust. Now, I say family role, that could be in regards to your lupus family, your fibro family, not just your biological family. The N in boundaries is to notice. Pay attention to whether or not your boundaries are wavering. Are you causing confusion due to inconsistent boundaries? Or are you being clear and consistent? I'm not comfortable talking about this. I would like to talk to you about this one-on-one or in a group, whatever your boundary is. Are you being clear? Are you being consistent? The D in boundary is don't give up. Setting boundaries is new and can be challenging. Yes, don't give up just because someone may try to violate your boundary. Keep being assertive and standing your ground. Consistency is key with boundaries in a community setting. The A in boundary is for assimilate. Keep true to your word because all you have to believe is what you tell yourself. This means you need to change your behavior to match your intentions and the changes you are making. And R, last one. Well, actually, there's R and then there's Y. Excuse me. The second to last one is remember. It's important to remember that healthy boundaries will keep your relationships healthy. Boundaries help prevent enmeshment and are part of self-care. And Y, the final one in boundary. You matter. Your well-being is just as important as everyone else in your life, and that includes the people in your community group. If you aren't taking care of yourself and being your best self, how can you help anyone else? How can you pour from an empty cup, as we say often in the chronic illness community? When you're out of spoons, no matter how uncomfortable it is to set boundaries, it is important, and it's an important piece of having healthy relationships and healthy community. So there are several ways. This is so great. This is from Peace That Comes with Boundaries. It's such a great quote that I had to include it in a slide. There are several ways to begin setting healthy boundaries in your. First, tune into your feelings. Ask yourself what feels right and healthy for you. Secondly, set your limits. You can only set good boundaries if you know what your limits are. And thirdly, be direct. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Lastly, make your self-care the priority. Putting yourself first is most important in your lupus or fibro fight. Don't be afraid to set limits that help you be the best you beyond fibro, beyond lupus, whatever it is that you're going through. And finally, remember boundaries are all about honing in on your feelings and honoring them in your life. Setting boundaries takes a lot of bravery, a lot of practice, and patience to achieve. So that is from Peace Comes with Boundaries by Raquel Dozier. And let's see. I'm not going to go there yet. So I want to kind of close with some community resources. For many people, health-related support group may fill a gap between medical treatment and the need for emotional support. A person's relationship with a doctor or medical personnel may not provide adequate emotional support, and a person's family and friends may not understand the impact of a disease or a treatment. A support group among people with shared experiences may function as that bridge between medical and emotional needs. Finding community may present as a challenge to some, especially in these post-COVID-19 times. But thankfully, there are many online resources to provide you with connection if you would like it. So here are some that I find helpful. I know Support Fibro can connect you with really important resources within the fibromyalgia community. Looms for Lupus, another nonprofit I work with and Melissa has worked with, offers support for those with lupus and fibromyalgia, and they offer support groups in English and Spanish. Hospital for Special Surgery, they have counseling, they have online services, they have support groups. They also have support groups for teens and parents. And then, of course, you have us here at More Than Lupus. And More Than Lupus offers monthly in-person and online support groups that lends to an environment of acceptance and community. We meet the third Saturday of the month, every month, and our Lupus Facebook Live support chats meet every week. Usually we meet on Mondays, but we're calling it Muse Day because I have so many appointments on Mondays for the month of December. I'm changing it to Tuesday. So our Monday Lupus Live support chat will now be on a Tuesday. So we're calling it our Muse Day Live support chat. And that's an amazing way to foster connections with others in the lupus community from the comfort of your own home. And we give information and inspiration. We talk about our questions, our comments, our concerns, and everyone is seen and heard. Now, these are just a sampling of the many support resources that are available to you if you're living with fibromyalgia or lupus. If you're looking for a community to connect with, we are here and we are eager to listen. You are just one click away from finding your community, and we sure hope you take that first step. Because for those of us who have been connected to the lupus community for many years now, we wouldn't have it any other way. And those friendships are some of the most pivotal and important friendships that we've ever had in our life. So that's all that I have right now. I would love just to say thank you again to everyone at Support Fibro for including me in this conference and for allowing me just a few minutes to talk about the importance of community and the different aspects of community. If you want to find me, you can find me at morethanlupus.com. You also can go to @morethanlupus on Facebook and @lupusmore on Twitter, and Kelli Roseta @More Than Lupus on Instagram. So thank you so much, ladies.